mystical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the SNL Stats Superfan Takeover. I believe this is Superfan Takeover episode 4. We have a very fun topic for you guys today. Let me ask you guys at home, have you ever been watching SNL and thought to yourselves, wow, that is a great impression? Well, today the panel is going to discuss some of our favorite impressions of all time and which ones are worthy of getting a spot on the SNL Superfan Mount Rushmore. That is Mount Rushmore, but with the word impression stuck in the middle there. That is a pun from our friend John. I'm your host, Sammy Kay. Before I introduce the panel, last week, John sat down with the stats guru himself, Mike Murray, and fellow superfan Andrew Haynes for another By the Numbers episode. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please be sure to do so. Also, I'm sure Nicole is going to touch on our socials, but if you're not following us on Twitter and Instagram, definitely give us a follow and please subscribe to us wherever podcasts are sold. And of course, YouTube. YouTube is very important, so please make sure you're subscribed to us there as well. So, like I said, we have a very fun topic of discussion today, so let's get right to it and introduce everybody to the panel. First, we have Andrew Haskell. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm feeling great. We already got one pun in the books, which is great. I love my puns. Superfan Takeover number 4. I've been lucky enough to be a part of all of them, so I'm one Superfan Takeover away from being in the Superfan Takeover 5-timers club. Super excited. Thanks for having me again, Sammy.
Well, I wouldn't count on a smoking jacket or anything like that because I'm still waiting for mine for the regular SNL Stats family of shows, but maybe we'll get one of these days. Next, I'd like to introduce to the panel Bill Kenney. Bill, how have you been? What's new with you?
Hey, Sammy. Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Great to be back here. Hope I make a good impression on everyone tonight. So,
wow, I should have thought of that. I'm really kicking myself for not thinking of that one. Extra points for your Mount Rushmore already. And last but not least, she is our social media marketing extraordinaire. We have Nicole. This is your first time being a part of the Superfan Takeover. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're excited to be a part of this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the Superfan Takeover. So I was on a roundtable previously on the trivia, but I'm really grateful to be in the Superfan Takeover community, specifically this very special niche within the stats world. So I'm really excited to geek out with everybody on the impressions. I love to debate and argue with people, but I'm not great at having my opinion and just sticking with something. I'm really good at debating people. I'm less good at having my thing that I feel strongly about. So we're going to see what happens tonight. I'm really excited to see what you all do. I'm even more intrigued to see what I do because it's going to be we don't really know what's going to happen. And that's going to be fun. Sometimes that's how it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just speaking for myself, this topic was a bit of a struggle as someone who typically is like, all right, guys, I want to talk about this on the Superfan Takeover this week. I always choose a topic. And after it's all said and done, I'm like, man, this is a daunting task. So basically, I tasked the Superfans with coming up with their favorite impression in a number of different categories that would have a place on their personal celebrity impression Mount Rushmore. The only rule was that you could not use a cast member or host or whoever for multiple of the categories. So, for example, let's say Haskell has Daryl Hammond on his Rushmore. I'm not sure if he does. He can only put him in one of the 4 categories. Now, what are those categories, you may be asking? Those would be political impressions, actors and actresses. That's one category. The next category would be musicians. And the final category is wild card. So wild card could be anything that does not fall into one of those categories. After we all go around and discuss our choices for a certain category, we will put it to a vote. And, if there's any ties or anything like that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But at the end of this episode, we will be coming up with our definitive SNL Superfan Celebrity Mount Rushmore. So we're in for a very fun show. So I think we might as well just get started here. first category is political impressions. So there have obviously been a ton of incredible impressions going all the way back to the original Not Ready for Primetime Players. So Haskell, I'm going to bring you in, and please tell us who is your pick for this category.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, isn't SNL kind of built on this? So every era, every core cast, there's so many great impressions. There's a few, if you asked me to simply, I had to just name the best and then we didn't have any of the other rules, it's probably a few that I would have went with, but kind of taking a guess on where the rest of the panel would go, I tried to go down my list a little bit. I went with the Trump boys from Alex Moffat and Mikey Day. And maybe they look a little bit better in comparison, but during those Trump years, it was just like so by the numbers where a cameo by a celebrity that looks like who was ever in the news, reading off almost a transcript of what they said that week. And Eric and Don Jr. were like the two characters that they really, really made from that, from the Trump years, where they could show up. It didn't matter what was going on in the news. They were making their own jokes, and they had forged their own characters. And I think in the long run, those will be the two characters that last from that era. Eric Trump probably will be Alex Moffat's like definitive character on SNL. And rightfully so. I mean, he killed it for an entire administration. Every time they showed up, like it never felt like that well was drying up. When everything else during that era felt like the well was drying up, they kept that going. So I had to go with those two. I know, there's so many great impressions, but just for what those two did during that era, and when you ask me to pick stuff, I'm always looking for value, so I could throw in two people there instead of one. I could lump them in, so I grabbed some value. So I went Eric and Donald Trump Jr. By Mikey Day and Alex Moffat.
Well, Haskell, I love this choice. These are impressions that if we recorded this an hour earlier, those would have been my picks. But at the last minute, I made a switcheroo. But if anyone wants to speak on the Trump boys, chime in.
I'll speak just since I went the opposite route as you. I love what you said about how they created their own characters, and it was really refreshing in this news cycle where truly the monologitis is a term that my family coined basically for people who just don't stop talking. And there are a lot of political figures who have monologitis. So Sarah Palin, for example, which maybe we'll get to, but they're literally just real speeches on SNL for so many years. That was comedy. It was very refreshing to have those two. And it was clearly they were embellishing and creating a character, taking some stereotypes or some little observations that people had picked up and really running with them. And I loved that. It was really refreshing. However, I went the polar opposite. That's not a pun, polar. I wish it were a pun because I love Amy, but the polar opposite direction as you. Should I reveal my choice?
Real quick, Bill, do you have anything else to add on the Trump boys or?
I love the pick. They debuted as Fred Armisen and Seth Meyers, and they were very bland. And, obviously that was before he was president. But, and the funniest part about the impressions were that they were the exact opposite personalities as they are in real life. Apparently, Donald Jr. is the dumb one in real life. So it's pretty funny how they kind of flipped that on a dime and made it into something extravagant.
Yeah. All I'll add to this conversation is for me, these were two characters and impressions that were almost the saving grace of the whole Trump era. Like, if anything, the one of the probably the only negative of not having him in the White House anymore is that we are not going to see Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump on SNL probably ever. I don't know, but I miss their presence on the desk. I think we recently saw them earlier in the season prior to the election. So great choice, Haskell. Nicole, let's move back over to you. Do you want to share your pick for this category?
Yes. So again, love that choice with the more of character acting. I went with someone who is cousins with the person that he is impersonating, and that would be Larry David as Bernie Sanders. So this was probably my easiest choice out of the four, just because I love Larry David so much, and I love Bernie Sanders so much as people in general. I have Bernie Sanders socks from his viral meme with his like legs crossed and his blue mask from a few months ago. I love both of them just as comedy figures. I think they're both hilarious. Yeah. So I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. One of my favorite sketches of all time is Burn Your Enthusiasm, from when Larry David hosted, I think it was 2017. I could be wrong. And if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, you will be obsessed with this sketch because they just have all the little details of it, little things that I was blown away with. They had, parodies of a lot of the characters from the show, little minutia about it that were just brilliant. And Larry David, everything he does is funny. Everything he can do things no one else can do, and I think that's also true for Bernie Sanders. The way that he acts and the way that he is, it's kind of only he can pull it off, and they both have that in common. So I feel a kinship. I'm probably distant cousins with them too. I'm Jewish, and I think we're all, I probably like fifth or sixth cousins with them too. So I feel connected.
I feel the same way as someone who's Jewish. We could be cousins, who knows? But it's funny that Haskell went first with my initial pick, and Nicole went second with my pick. So I will briefly, before I bring in Haskell and Bill, we'll speak to, Larry David as Bernie Sanders was my pick. Honestly, I could show you my notes on the camera right now, and pretty much everything Nicole said is somewhere on this page. But the one thing I will add to it is from a meta perspective of having Larry David, someone who, was a part of the show very briefly in the 80s. He never really made, any sort of appearances to my knowledge, after that relationship was severed. And he obviously had, great success with Seinfeld, and then later Curb Your Enthusiasm, to the point where, he didn't need SNL. And I believe he made an appearance at the 40th anniversary. And he had a great bit with him and Seinfeld. And, maybe that, kind of rejuvenated that relationship. I don't know if they were sour or whatever, but I just think the impression, not only does it work great as an impression, but just the fact that it kind of rekindled that relationship between Larry David and the show. His episodes that he have hosted have been, some of my favorites in the last couple of years. So excellent choice. Haskell, Bill, do you guys have anything to add on this one?
Well, first, we could do 100 of these Superfan takeovers, and nothing in my mind will ever top Nicole saying she loves Bernie Sanders as a comedy figure. she was like, damn, he's my comedic idol. Here's the thing, that probably would have been really close to the top for me. My only issue with I loved the Burn Your Enthusiasm sketch, but then it just felt like every appearance from him was a debate sketch where he was kind of monologuing, and it would have ranked higher on my list if we got more stuff that put him in these weird situations, or even if he was on Update or things like that, outside of really simply getting debate sketches from him.
Yeah, no, that's a totally fair point. Bill, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I completely agree. Curb Your Enthusiasm is probably one of the top 5 shows ever made. And you don't want to even say it's a redemption story, because he didn't need a redemption story. He had 2 of the biggest shows of all time. But the fact that he only got 1 sketch on the air in 1985, I believe, when he was a writer on SNL. And to come back and to be able to do this, and it's one of only 2 times that SNL was able to pull off this, wow, this person looks like this and talks like this. It was Tina Fey and Bernie Sanders. For all the other problematic ways they tried to shove, square pegs into round holes on the show, that was perfect.
Right. It was definitely a lot more successful than Ben Stiller as Michael Cohen, right?
Oh my
Who could forget that? Bill, that's not your pick, right?
It's actually didn't. It's De Niro as Robert. No.
Yeah.
Oh.
There you go. But
Yeah.
no, what I'll add to what you were saying is I do feel, not to get off on too of a tangent, but it's kind of cool that this kind of current era of the show has had a lot of those SNL redemption stories, whether it's Adam Sandler, Larry David, Eddie Murphy. There's not too many really notable people, who haven't kind of had that opportunity. Sarah Silverman is another one that comes to mind, who hosted a couple years back. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I'll just add a note on Larry David and how funny he is. Everyone should go watch his every interview, but his Stephen Colbert one from last January. I rewatched it yesterday, and it literally feels like an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's like most hosts, they're supposed to be so gracious and, oh, thank you for this water. Meanwhile, Larry David's like, why'd you put this water here? It's going to fall over. That's so stupid. Like, he's just the whole interview is just him critiquing like the Colbert set and like how the water shouldn't be in this place and that. And it's just like Curb. It feels like a scripted comedy, but it's not, and it's genius. And then my other point about comedy figures, I really want to normalize thinking and people discussing that politicians are comedy figures. I think Hillary Clinton is one of the funniest people on this planet. And that's my take. I love her. I think I love her more now than I ever did when she was a politician. That's true for all of them. This is very tangential, but when they have that opportunity to, like, the pressure's off a little bit, we actually realize, oh, they're human. They don't have to like constantly be obsessed with their image in the same way. They always are, but
For your sake, hopefully, maybe Hillary will host one of these days. I don't know, but that'd be crazy, right? Haskell, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I want Obama to host.
Yeah,
season finale.
that would be pretty epic. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the last thing I'll add on to this whole Bernie Sanders conversation before we move over to Bill's pick, because this is my pick, for this category, is it is kind of amazing that, similar to what Bill was saying with the Tina Fey situation with Sarah Palin. He almost doesn't even need to be doing an impression, but it's not like I'm saying he ever phones it in or anything like that, but he just is the character. There's just so much, like, the Venn diagram is basically a circle that it's just is a perfect kind of celebrity impression that I'm glad Nicole picked, and it's my choice as well. So Bill, let's bring you in here, and I have a feeling you're going to kick it a little bit old school compared to our choices.
A little bit, but I will segue from Hillary to the longest running political impression on the show, Mr. Darrell Hammond as Bill Clinton. It's amazing that he replaced an icon in Phil Hartman doing Bill Clinton, and an iconic sketch. Even to this day, with Darrell doing it for 20 years, the first one you think of is the McDonald's sketch with Phil Hartman, but he still found a way to make it his own, put all those little twitches in there, put the thumb and the lip biting. And when you look back, and I was watching some of the older ones with Darrell yesterday, one of the funniest ones he did was right at the beginning, and he was, calling from the White House kitchen, and he was ordering all this food and, calling all these politicians and these people and telling them not to hate him. And, why doesn't anybody love me anymore? And he wasn't doing a great impression. But as it progressed into the second year of him being on the show, he made it his own. Like and it really kind of amped up when it came to Monica and everything that happened with that and the impeachment. And one of the funniest cold opens of all time, he had 2 lines. He walked out right after he was acquitted and said, "I am bulletproof," and walked away. Like that was everything to me. And the fact that he's done it 91 times, he's done it for 24 years, he's done it as recently as 2019, and he still does it great. They still find a way to bring him on. You said about the Trump brothers not being able to come back. You may find a way, because they find a way to bring Bill back, even though Hillary's not running anymore and he has nothing really going on. So that's my pick, Darrell Hammond.
I will say though that Bill is a former president, and the Trump Bros are former whatevers. But anyways, that's an excellent choice. My issue when coming up with this list was with Daryl Hammond in particular, that there are so many fantastic impressions, and having the rule to where we can only pick one impression for the categories. I found myself just not picking any because I couldn't pick a Daryl Hammond impression. I didn't want to hurt the other ones. But Haskell, Nicole, do you guys have anything to add on Daryl Hammond as Bill Clinton?
So the one thing, and as I was going through like the great impressionists in SNL history, is like sometimes there are these really, really great technical impressions that you never really get to sink your teeth into. They're just really good technical impressions, and they never turn into great characters. And for Daryl Hammond, this is one of those cases where he actually was able to turn it into a great character. And that's why I think it's his definitive character. It's his definitive impression. I think it's going to be the impression that he'll always be remembered for. And so great choice.
Yeah. And, just going on to that stat of 91 times, it really is incredible. I mean, obviously Daryl is still a big part of the show as the announcer. But I remember very, very recently, I think there was a Celebrity Family Feud, which I watched many of this weekend to try to prepare for this episode, where he's flirting with Margot Robbie as Ivanka Trump. And man, I mean, the impression just kills every time, no matter where you find a place to put it. Nicole, do you have anything to add before we move on?
Yes. So if I wasn't going to go with Larry David as Bernie, Kate McKinnon's Hillary and Daryl Hammond's Bill were tied for second for me. I love both. I think they're incredible impressions. It's also impressive that whereas with the Larry David Bernie impression, what's so special about that is there is no one else who could possibly do it. Now that Larry David has done it, I don't want to ever see anyone else touch that impression. It's so sacred to him. But what is so distinctive and incredible about Daryl and Kate's impressions is that they weren't the first to do it, but they still really made it their own, and they will be remembered so fondly for it without taking away from the people who came before them and did it. We can still honor the people who did it first, and also acknowledge that these are probably, for both of them, both of them are two of the best impressionists of all time. So for this, I think these two might be the ones that they're both remembered for above all, which is crazy because they didn't originate them. So I think it just is a testament to their power, their empathy, compassion, because in order to have great impressions, Kate talks about this a lot in interviews, that it comes from empathy for her people that she does. So it speaks to me really highly of their skill, their character, everything about both Daryl Hammond and Kate McKinnon.
No, definitely. I think that's a really great point, Nicole. In regards to how they didn't originate these characters. It's always amazing to me as an SNL fan, and I find myself on like the SNL wikis and fandom pages a lot, especially to prepare for this episode, to see, like, for example, Joe Biden. Like, I had no idea that Kevin Nealon, played Joe Biden, back in the day, and these politicians who have just been around for, almost the entire history of the show. It is really cool to see throughout every era, this Bill Clinton, this Hillary, so on and so forth. But okay, cool. So that
Sammy, before we jump to the vote,
yeah,
I think the panel has a bit of a mea culpa. I think John will fire us. I think the fans will be firing us if we go this entire segment and not at least just honorable mention Will Ferrell's George W. Bush.
100%. And you can speak to this right now.
So that would have been I actually have Will Ferrell later on my list. So he was knocked off from this impression. That was a case of, it was so damn good and so damn iconic that I think it's one of those, like, this athlete didn't get a 100% Hall of Fame voting because people just assumed everybody else would vote for him. So we just need to spend, 10 seconds saying, yeah, of course, that impression is as good as it gets.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame analogy can also attribute to something that happened last night with the Oscars, with people expecting maybe Chadwick Boseman was going to win. But Bill, were you about to add something?
No, I completely agree, Haskell, and he would have been second, but again, he got bumped because of him coming up later on in the podcast. So, yeah, what he did with that, it's going to be hard to top the 2000 debates. Everything about that strategery and lockbox, and then he continued to do it, and he brought it to Broadway, for God's sakes. Like, that's how good he was at this. So, yeah, absolutely agree.
I was about to say very good strategery to make sure that we touched on this so that we don't piss anybody off. Very good strategery there, Haskell. Good job.
Absolutely. Thank you, Haskell, for bringing that one up. But now we put it to a vote. So we have three choices, because me and Nicole both voted for Bernie for our pick. So we kind of cancel each other out. So that's 1 point basically going to Bernie. That's kind of the way this rolls. So it's really up to Haskell and Bill to vote between Bernie, the Trump boys, and Daryl Hammond as Bill Clinton. And just to remind everybody for the rules in regard to voting, they cannot vote for their own impression. So Haskell, I'm going to start with you. Who do you got for this one?
I gotta go Daryl Hammond's Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with Bernie.
Going with Bernie, so that supersedes it, right? So that's 2-1.
Put him on the board.
Bernie, you heard it here first. Larry David as Bernie Sanders is officially on the SNL Stats Celebrity Impression War for the political category. So, glad that didn't have to end in like some sort of bloodbath between all of us. So it was very civil, but awesome. Cool. So we're going to move on to our next category here, which is actors and actresses. So Bill, why don't you start us off with this one?
Well, I'm pretty sure that no one else will have this one because I'm going pretty old school. And I'm going to one that's probably one of the most random in the history of Saturday Night Live. That was a continuing impression. I'm going with Billy Crystal as Fernando Lamas. Most people, I'm older than you guys. I don't know who Fernando Lamas is, but if you YouTube him and look him up as far as his appearances on Johnny Carson and on The Love Boat, he nailed this impression perfectly. And the funniest thing was that he wasn't popular in 1982. He wasn't popular. He hadn't been a star in at least 20 years. And Billy just took off with it. It's probably the only occurrence of a novelty song coming off of SNL as well, which is how I first heard of it. I wasn't watching SNL when his character debuted, but I knew the song "You Look Marvelous," and you can look it up. It's terrible, but it's catchy and it's very 80s and very shticky. But yeah, and he also has the only time it's ever happened in the Weekend Update / SNL News category where he hosted as a character. He hosted Saturday Night News 4 times as Fernando. Look them up. It's just the funniest thing. The entire thing was completely improvised. It was the only sketch they did at the time that wasn't on cue cards. So the host is sitting there with Billy Crystal, knowing that he's going to crack them up, knowing that he's going to ask these crazy questions, and he succeeded every time. And they did such a great job with that. So Fernando, Billy Crystal, put him on the board.
Well, great pick, Bill. I do remember when I was first starting to get into SNL, those old the documentaries they used to do, which I wish they still did, where they did Saturday Night in the 80s and 90s. And I remember Fernando, when they're talking about Billy Crystal and the "You Look Marvelous," that's just an iconic line. And so that's definitely a great choice. Haskell, Nicole, do you guys have anything to add on this one?
Bill, I'm so happy that you saw or heard that song when you were at such an impressionable age. Fun counter number 3. Yeah, what a maybe even if the impression itself, like people knowing it's an impression, knowing who it's about, might not be so known. The "You Look Marvelous," that phrase definitely is iconic in SNL. Great choice. Just thinking about like the Oscars last night, and Billy Crystal he hosted the Oscars like 9 times. Like That's exactly who I needed last night hosting the Oscars. Like, I love some Billy Crystal. Like, great choice. Want to see some more Billy Crystal.
I echo that. We could always use a little more Billy Crystal in our lives. Before we move on to the next pick, Nicole, do you have anything to add on this one?
I totally agree. Did anyone see, on a similar note, Jimmy Kimmel's little segment? I think it was a commercial technically, but he was sitting outside. I think it was Staples Center, and he basically was like wishing he could host. Very tangential, but anyway, I just agree that we needed a host, and I think Billy Crystal would have been the perfect person to do it. I'm such a big fan of his. When Harry Met Sally is one of my favorite movies. Also, what needs to be discussed more in pop culture is the trifecta that is Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg, and Billy Crystal. Everyone just go Google the three of them. You will be bawling your eyes out at 4 a.m., like researching, scrolling, watching videos. It's so heartwarming. The three of them just had and will always have a really special connection, and they just seemed like siblings from the start, like there was just a soul connection, and there always will be. So I could cry. I love all three of them, and Billy Crystal, big place in my heart for him.
Absolutely, and I also co-sign the Billy Crystal, Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg of it all. But cool. All right, let's move on to Haskell. Do you want to bring in your pick for this category?
Yeah, actors was harder than I thought it would be. Like political impressions, so like iconic, and actors. I mean, there's definitely some iconic ones, but maybe they fade a little bit more, or they're like built into the show a little bit more, so they don't kind of they're not like out on the forefront like the political impressions. But I went with Joe Pesci as done by Jim Breuer. Probably one of the first times Jim Brewer has ever been brought up on this podcast. Like, I think one of the all-time underrated cast members. I know if you've ever heard him do an interview about SNL, and since he's left, like that, if you want to talk about, not ending on the greatest of circumstances and not having a great relationship with the show, you can look right there. But he was phenomenal in the short time that he was at SNL. From 1995 to 1997, they did the Joe Pesci show 9 times. So they were definitely squeezing it in there. The impression itself is next to flawless in terms of like the voice, getting the vibe of Joe Pesci. And then what they turned it into with the Joe Pesci show in terms of getting other impressions, some of the interactions that they had. Funny enough, last night, to go through it, I watched the Joe Pesci's like Ode to the Oscars was that episode that I watched on Oscar Sunday. So to me, just like as good as you can get when it comes to impersonating an actor.
That's a great pick. Definitely someone that I was looking at when I was coming up with my list. Nicole, Bill, do you guys have anything to add on Joe Pesci, Jim Brewer's Joe Pesci?
Yeah, Haskell, I'm with you there, and that was up there for me. And I'm actually going to bring up the Joe Pesci show a little bit later, give you a teaser there. But yeah, he was part of that amazing cast that came in '95, and he got overshadowed by Sherry and Will and Daryl and Molly, and he kind of never found his niche except for Joe Pesci and Goat Boy. And let's not talk about Goat Boy, but. No, the Pesci show was fantastic. And even the people that he brought on, he always seemed to find the best. Some of these talk show parodies on SNL up to this day, they don't bring on the right people as the guests. But, Colin Quinn sitting next to him as De Niro, it was perfect. Great pick.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I definitely have a talk show sort of parody on my list. Coming up in a couple categories here. All right, so I guess with that, maybe you could dive into your pick for this category.
Yeah, so this one was a lot more difficult. I think the thing is with the political impressions, I mean, what was it, 91 times Daryl Hammond has done Bill? That would just never happen with an actor or musician or athlete, anything like that, which really goes to show that the political impressions, it is sort of an anchor of the show. There's so many other kinds, but it wouldn't be relevant enough for the other ones to be more prominent in terms of frequency. So it was harder. There were just so many random ones to think about that have happened a good number of times, but I didn't have as strong feelings as the other ones for politicians. But what I chose is someone who I really wanted to spotlight for a few reasons: Vanessa Bayer and her Rachel Green impression. I wasn't the biggest Friends fan in the world. I know most people in my life are huge Friends people, and I'm like a moderate one. But my favorite thing with the impressions in any category is when they get the attention of the person, the real person being impersonated. So it just there's the meta aspect of it all, and I'm fascinated by how SNL influences pop culture, how it, that kind of full circle element of it all is really what interests me the most about the show and its history and all that stuff. So it's just, in terms of, we're talking about technical impressions, Vanessa Bayer, I think, was always someone who was so nuanced and so intentional with her mannerisms and her vocal inflections. She was really phenomenal at everything like that, with everything she did. She just was always very polished, very seasoned. And so this one was no exception, no impression. Excuse me there. It was a really good impression and no exception. So yeah. And then when Jennifer Aniston came on Update next to her, and she was being her very girl next door vibe that she always has of like, no, like this isn't me. That's not how I talk. And it just, how they were riffing off of each other. It reminded me of among other things, Jennifer Aniston's comedic chops, hence the full circle of it all. So I'm a little bit cheating because Rachel Green is a fictional character, but the fact that it's a fictional character played by an actress who had that full circle moment, I think makes my cheating worthwhile.
Aren't all actors in one way or another playing like a fictional character in their lives? No, I think that's a fantastic choice. And Vanessa Bayer is someone who I just don't think is talked enough on this podcast, as someone who's recently left the show, who I've been missing a ton. When her and Bobby Moynihan left at the same time, that was like a dagger in the heart. But Haskell, Bill, do you guys have anything to add on this impression?
Yeah, I like impressions where maybe somebody finds a hook that you didn't know existed, and not that, I remember the first time seeing that impression and being like, oh, okay. Like, I don't think I would have come up with that. But now that I hear it, it's impossible not to hear. And if in terms of Jennifer Aniston, I'm reminded of, I think it's back in 2013 when Zach Galifianakis hosted, and they did the Jennifer Aniston lookalike pageant. That is to me, one of my favorite kind of just off the wall, like weird sketches. You got to check out that sketch as well.
Yeah, I love that pick. My only regret is that they never did a full-blown Friends sketch while she was doing the impression. They had done it back when Jennifer hosted with Horatio as Joey, which was hilarious. But the fact that they never went that far with it, I guess it was a little past its time by that point. But great pick. Vanessa is just amazing. She's up there for me as well.
Yeah.
So.
And wasn't Colin Quinn Chandler in that sketch? Am I remembering that incorrectly?
Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
Bizarre. But awesome pick, Nicole. I guess since you didn't pick mine, I'll dive into my pick. This is someone who, when he came back to host the show, they kind of made fun of the fact in his monologue that he wasn't really known for impressions or being in live sketches or anything like that. Let's get in the cage here. Andy Samberg is Nicolas Cage. For whatever reason, that's high praise. That's high praise is something I say once a week, whether it's via text with my friends, whether it's the GIF of Nicolas Cage and Andy Samberg, which, circling back to when Nicole was just saying about when Jennifer Aniston came on Update. Now, that's something that is always super fun on SNL when they go full circle and they bring in the real person to be with the impression. They've done it so many times over the years. But, I mean, Andy Samberg is someone who, was not super known for doing impressions. And I feel like it's simultaneously a great impression and a terrible impression at the same time. Like, it's like he's in on the joke of the fact that it's not a good impression, but that like the self-aware aspect of it makes it a really good impression. I mean, it was a formula that they did a bunch of times that, and they always brought in like just incredible cameos. Liam Neeson, Bradley Cooper, and I had to like double check just to kind of refresh my memory, but they were never like the hosts of that particular episode. They always just like, yeah, this person's like in New York or whatever, let's bring them in to do a cameo. Like, that was just super fun, and that's an aspect of SNL that I've kind of missed this season because of COVID restrictions and all that we talked about during the Dan Levy episode. Bringing Eugene Levy in that glass box was super fun. So but yeah, overall, Andy Samberg as Nick Cage is my pick. If anyone wants to jump in on this one.
Sammy, I got to ask you for your love of that impression. And you've also talked about your love of MacGruber. And one of the things that we're trying to do is get you into MacGruber. And if you heard that they greenlit MacGruber 2 and you weren't in that movie, do you know what you would say?
How am I not in that movie?
Yes.
Yeah, that was I'm happy you set me up for that one, but just so many aspects of that sketch are just fantastic. Anyone else want to jump in on this one?
Oh, that's a great pick, and you touched on all the points. That's when cameos were fun. Just these random people who would come in. You had no idea who it was going to be that week, and it really. I mean, Andy had his own niche on the show, but coming on to Update and being able to do that as many times as he did was great. So yeah, great pick.
All right, and then Nicole, unless you have anything to add on this one.
Yeah, sorry, I just got so excited because that monologue holds such a special place in my heart because
I watch it very often.
Yes, yeah, me too, and it's just so beautiful because I think this is true. The first time Bill and Andy were both ever in anything was together on Weekend Update doing an impression off, and the whole running joke of it was that Bill was this phenomenal impressionist and Andy was just this charismatic, goofy guy who could do a bad impression and he would still win the contest over Bill. That was the whole thing of it. And so for them to come back and do the same thing for Andy to do all these mediocre impressions and still kind of win. That's debatable who ended up winning that one, but it was just, that is so beautiful to me. Also just the meta-ness. That was a great point about how it was an inside joke of it was a really bad but also good impression, and it was because of Andy and his role on the show that was so funny and special to people. So there's always whenever the person with the impression has a certain reputation on the show that they can run with and make you feel more connected to them and the way that they operate on the show, their role and all that stuff is always fun.
Yeah. Well, this is the tough part because we all picked different impressions for this category. So we're going to have to put it to a vote. I guess I'll start with you, Nicole. Who are you voting? Let me just give you a refresher. We have Billy Crystal as Fernando. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher the last name. Is Lamas?
Yes, Lamas.
Okay. I didn't want to lose my SNL street cred. Jim Brewer as Joe Pesci. And then you can't vote for your pick. Vanessa Bayer as Rachel Green. And then my pick, Andy Samberg, is Nick Cage.
Well, I mean, I think I know who I'm going to pick based on how I'm feeling right now, which is I'm going to go with Andy as Nick Cage. And Nick Cage, I feel like it was Nick Cage as Andy as Nick Cage a little bit there when he came back. So if anything, I'm kind of also half voting for Nick Cage as Andy as Nick Cage. So sure. I'm voting for both of them right now.
Yeah. All right, Bill, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with the one I had as my second pick, Jim Brewer as Joe Pesci.
Jim Brewer as Joe Pesci. All right, Haskell, who you got?
I got to go Fernando Lamas. You look marvelous, iconic.
All right, it's up to you, Sammy.
Oh my God. This is tough. I think I'm going to go with Joe Pesci. Jim Brewer's Joe Pesci is my pick. Put him on the Rushmore. You heard it here first.
$500 grand prize.
It does break my heart. I almost, just wanted to throw away my pick to Vanessa Bayer just to, throw it to a tie there. But I had to go with Jim Brewer on that one. So Jim Brewer is on the board. Let's move on to our next category. We got musicians. So I'm going to let Nicole start off with this one. Who's your pick for this?
Okay, well, I worked a little bit backwards. I think some of us are doing this, that we feel certain people are required to win certain categories, and then we'll choose one of their many fabulous impressions in the category. Maya Rudolph had to own this category for me. Her role on the show has really been, among all the amazing things she does, her role as this brilliant, musically gifted impressionist. It feels to me like a tribute to her mom. I'll build up to who I chose, but her mom was this incredible. I talked about this on the Rudolph Roundtable, but in short, her mom, Minnie Riperton, was a phenomenal, just no words kind of singer, and her life was sadly cut short due to cancer, and she was just on track to be one of the greatest, one of the icons, and so I truly believe that Maya Rudolph's work on SNL with her musical impressions is sort of a way of continuing her mom's legacy, and I think there's a lot of her mom that's in her, and it's so beautiful, and of course Maya's so funny that we forget that those musical impressions are incredible. So I had to go with none other than Beyonce. One of my favorite sketches in the world is the one after Blue Ivy was born, and it's basically a celebrity rotating impression off where, speaking of Andy Samberg, he plays White Butler. White Butler ushers in all these celebrities. Taylor Swift is there, Nicki Minaj is there, Prince is there. It's a ton of them. Jay Pharoah had his ingenious Jay-Z. It was great, and Maya really held it down and anchored the whole sketch, and it was perfect. I talked about it again on the roundtable, just that it was compared to the Beyonce recently, which was great too. I just wish that she had done the chops. This is a little tangential, but basically I loved that one specifically because we saw that range, and there's so many where we've seen her vocal range as well as her ability to just hold it down in this grounding force that Beyonce Knowles has in her, this genius, powerful, almighty being that she is. So that's fine.
So Maya as Beyonce is Nicole's pick. Great choice. We recently just saw Beyonce in that Hot Ones sketch, which I really enjoyed. Do either of you guys want to jump in on this one?
I am slightly afraid to say this.
Oh no!
Say it. It's
gonna hurt me. Don't hurt me.
Never truly understood the overwhelming love for that impression. In my mind, it doesn't check the boxes for me. It's not a super great technical impression. I think one of the issues is it came out, Maya started doing that character very kind of early in Beyonce's career, before Beyonce was Queen Bee. So, and then what she created as an impression just carried on after Beyonce became super famous. So it's not a great technical impression. It's also, to me, not a lasting character. You mentioned there was sort of an impression off sketch, and to me, every impression that came into that sketch is better. Even next to Jay Pharoah's amazing Jay-Z, it's better. So I love Maya Rudolph, obviously, and she's phenomenal. But that one impression, honestly, never actually did it for me for the amount of times it's shown up.
It's like we're on Hot Ones. It's getting hot in here. We got
the heat in the comments section.
Heat.
Yeah.
Bill, you got anything to add on what Haskell said, or any thoughts on the impression in general?
I like the pick of Maya. I probably would have went with Whitney, to be honest with you. I think her take on late in life Whitney with Bobby B was her better technical impression, but I think it's a good pick.
Yeah,
I
Nicole. Do you want to respond at all to what Haskell had to say? We can really open it up here.
Good points are being made, and I'm not afraid to say that I'm impressionable right now.
Oh,
thank you. Write it down. Thank you. Thank you. You got me. I am willing to, be a little flexible here. Here's what I love about the Beyonce one. I love Beyonce so much, but the reason, and this is something that we've talked about when with the Hot One sketch, which I actually didn't like at all, really. Beyonce isn't a funny character. There isn't really a way to make her comedic if you're actually really embodying her, because she has this intensity and this groundedness that she is truly like the ultimate diva of just almighty power. And so I think the best impression of Beyonce is never going to be funny. I think that the other people around her are going to outshine her. It's going to be something that's a little bit more spunky or quirky or weird. And the Beyonce one is just going to hold it down in this power. And so the best Beyonce impression in that sketch from 2012, I want to say, the best one would have been one that wasn't the most funny thing in the room. It was the one that just held it down and anchored it. And it's her anchoring of that sketch is the reason why all the other ones were so funny. And Maya usually is more of kind of at least recently when she comes back, she's more, she is great as the center of attention. But in that sketch, she's really good at being someone who uplifts the people around her and has them shine, which is great that she has both of those sides to her. With that said, my recency bias would have actually told me otherwise, not to go with Beyonce, because I did not like the Hot Ones very much. But I'm going to still hold my ground. I do love her Whitney a lot, particularly what you said, Bill, the late in life Whitney, kind of her latter years of being more quirky and a different relationship with the media than a kind of a young star who is like, I think she cared less what people thought, and she was having a little bit more fun. So, I'm impressionable, and should I alter? Are we allowed to do that?
I feel like you should stick with it. I feel like you should stick with your heart on this
my
one.
gut.
Go with your gut.
I'm gonna go with my gut, but yeah. I mean, it's important, like to just these conversations. You're all opening my eyes, and so it's good points are being made.
Yeah,
and impressive.
Points are made. Yeah.
You make a good point about her being the anchor in a crazy. I mean, think of all the Prince sketches she was in, and everything else that was crazy going on around her with Fred running around the stage, and good point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to turn this over to Bill on this one to give us his musical impression.
I went with another second time impression, where the first one was technically more impressionable. Phil Hartman as Frank Sinatra. Joe Piscopo had started it and was a little bit borderline obsessed with Frank, and was doing all these cadences and did a lot more singing than he did as an impression. It was kind of a loving tribute. When Phil took it over in 90, it turned into a little bit more mean-spirited, and I think Piscopo has even said as much, but it was a lot funnier. The Sinatra Group is one of the funniest sketches of the early 90s that you can find, with Jan Hooks as Sinead O'Connor, Sting as Billy Idol, and Chris Rock as Luther Campbell from Two Live Crew, and just going around. I mean, all the famous lines, from that, like, I've got chunks of guys like you in my stool, and what's with the bald chick. But that's the one that he's most remembered for, but he played it 10 times, and he did it in different scenarios. He did Weekend Update with Kevin, and they had famously cut him off at the Grammys, where he didn't get to finish his speech for the Lifetime Achievement Award. They cut him off, went to commercial. He came on the next week on Update, said, "Good to see you, Chevy. Thanks, everybody. Good night and drive home safely." And that was the whole bit. Like, he was out there for 3 seconds, boom, gone. And he did it in such a great way. And he even would throw in a couple of singing lines as well. But it was mostly about the cadence and how he did it. So that's my pick. Frank Sinatra, Phil Hartman.
Does anyone want to touch upon this impression?
That was number 2 for me. I love an impression that you can get sort of in different places, whether it can show up on Update, if they can show up in a sketch that is about them, if they can show up in sketches that's sort of an ensemble piece. I think that's what makes a great impression character. So great selection, Bill.
I agree. I think it is important to, remember Phil Hartman, and I'm glad that I think everyone who we really need to address and acknowledge here is coming up organically. So I'm glad for that. He was phenomenal. I read a lot of old interviews from people about him, and in addition to his talent on screen, he just seems like such an important person in the world of SNL. So I'm glad we're talking about him.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna take the reins here and go before you, Haskell. Because I'm the host and I can set the rules here.
It's your world. We're just living in it.
Yeah. So I alluded to my love of this person. I'm having some regrets for not voting for her. So I just have to gush about Vanessa Bayer as Miley Cyrus, the Miley Cyrus Show. I mean, what can I say? I mean, we talked about the kind of the format for the Jim Brewer, Joe Pesci show of having a talk show format for these celebrity impressions. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I think you really need, the impression at the center of it to be malleable and be able to, interact with different types of people. So the Miley Cyrus impression that Vanessa Bayer did, not only was it just like a great impression of, this kind of infectious Disney energy, but she was also playing her at this time where, like, I think Hannah Montana had already ended, or it was like kind of past. So they would make references to, the kind of, TMZ stories that would come out, around Miley Cyrus in that time. Jason Sudeikis as Billy Ray Cyrus in those sketches. Their dynamic was always great as like the, wholesome, embarrassing dad who, just loves his daughter. And Miley is just like, not having any of it. And of course, the bit that she did where she was just asking a million questions, like a little kid. I mean, she really captured this inner child sort of essence, but also, like I said, with all these things going on in the news at the time, there was like a bit of an edge to it, which I really liked. The impression itself was solid. Does anyone want to touch upon this impression?
Yeah. There is a very, very small chance that I will vote for whatever Haskell has to say, because this is one of my favorites. I don't know what it is. It could be the best thing ever. Low chance for you, because this one is like one of my favorites in the world. Just to say it. I think we're gonna give Vanessa her due here on Mount Rushmore for this one. I hope she wins. I was like, I grew up with Hannah Montana being like that was like the prime time for me, because Miley Cyrus is just a couple of years older than me. Like, that whole time was like my world, and her specifically was like my first concert I ever went to was a Hannah Montana concert. It was like everything to me. And it's interesting because Vanessa Bayer did such a good Miley when Miley was kind of outgrowing that wholesome Hannah Montana shell. And but Vanessa embodies more of that old Miley. So it was a really good parody, because she was showing the friction and the discrepancy between the old Miley and the emerging Miley, with Vanessa having that kind of more goofy, quirky. She played up the Southern accent in that impression. So it was funny with that friction at the time, because Miley, just at that era. I'm also just curious if right now, I think, if, say, Vanessa were on the cast a few years later, I don't think she would have been the person selected to do Miley, just since Miley has evolved so much, and it's no longer that Vanessa kind of funny, charming energy that would be the best parody for Miley. And it just is a testament to sort of this ever-evolving Miley-ness of it all. And so I loved Vanessa's impression and how she brought out that, that OG Hannah Montana energy that is my lifeline, my first, so everything for me. So I loved that one. And I would be shocked if I don't vote for you. So we'll see what you got, Haskell.
Sammy, just talking about, it's funny that you said, it's actually not, there were things that changed, and she didn't break out that impression later in her tenure. And Nicole, you said she probably wouldn't even been the one to do the impression later. And I think the impression is like this, to me, it's like this, it's almost the symbol of like this whole almost era of SNL of like Vanessa Bayer, Taran Killam, even Bobby Moynihan, that sort of got really eaten up by, it was the tail end of the core before them. This new really good core was coming in. You had the impending Trump years, and it's like Vanessa Baylor's Miley Cyrus, the Girlfriend Talk Show, pretty much anything that Nasim Pedrad did. Like, they all sort of like got eaten up, and you kind of missed this. So a great impression. I loved it, and it probably would have been higher on my list if it was brought out a little bit more in the tail end of Vanessa Bayer's tenure at SNL.
Yeah, this was pretty high up for me as well. And more Vanessa love, bring it on. But as someone who wasn't familiar with Hannah Montana, but was familiar with Miley's music, well, don't tell on me. I loved Miley's music, and the sign of a great impression is when you don't necessarily know everything about that person, but you can still enjoy it, still laugh at it, and maybe even go back and look to see where that came from, as Fernando Lamas for me. So yeah, I think that's a great pick.
Well, thank you. I feel like I'm already a winner here, but Haskell, let's hear your pick for this category.
Yeah, sorry, I just roasted you, and I don't even know what you're gonna say.
Hey,
what if he could have also picked Miley?
Yeah.
No, we're gonna talk it up on the Barry Gibb Talk Show. We're talking about chest hair. We're talking about crazy cool medallions. Jimmy Fallon as Barry Gibb on the Barry Gibb Talk Show. Again, we're doing another talk show, but I mean, to me, I love an impression that it's technically very good, but also those sketches are just so damn silly. And I love an impression where you sit there and you go, why are they like this? Like, why is Barry Gibb hosting a political talk show? Why is he so angry when anybody tries to make a point? And, just throwing Justin Timberlake in there as well. You kind of have to throw him in as part of the show. Like you talked about, Sammy, a line that you use every week. Justin Timberlake, no, don't. Is just something that I use at least once a week. I just love the silliness of those sketches. And Fallon's another like really good impressionist that hasn't really come up tonight, so I had to throw him in there. So I know I didn't win Nicole over, but that's my selection.
Well, I think that's a great selection. It's funny because a friend of mine just sent me a clip of the Barry Gibb Talk Show. And he's like, we don't talk about this enough, like just in general, like this sketch. And it's really interesting to me that Jimmy Fallon did that on his last year of the show, and he only did it once, and he's brought it back so many times, whether as a host or when Justin Timberlake is, the musical guest or the host or whatever, or just as a cameo. So it's kind of amazing that is, probably one of his, most well-known recurring, characters. But, he did it so late in his tenure. Does anyone want to, add on to this one?
Yeah, try to get that earworm out of your head when they start singing that song. And anything you have Justin in is going to work for me. I'm not the biggest Fallon fan in the world, but I think this was one of his better things. He didn't tend to crack up in it, which was always fantastic. And they had a lot of fun with it. And like you said, had these random guests on there that made no sense. And why is he hosting this? Yeah, great points. And I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, I agree. You didn't win me over, but you got a little pretty close. This to me is, in terms of just thinking about Fallon's tenure with SNL, both on his time and then when he's come back, I think this is a good example of him at his best. I will never understand. I see interviews saying that Fallon was one of the very few people that when he auditioned, Lauren said he could be ready tonight. He's ready. And Kristen Wiig was one of the other very few people that he had that feeling about. I might have been a Tina Fey interview, but I've seen that a few times, that Fallon was one of those very few people. And to me, that's just baffling, given the latter end of his tenure was marked by the breaking and the lightheartedness and, not being one of the more serious, committed impressionists like a Daryl Hammond or a Kate McKinnon, who is just fully immersed in the role. Those are the impressionists that I love. Whereas with Jimmy, it's you always, even at his best, he's always a little bit himself. He's never like fully embodying someone else. He's always like two seconds away from that Fallon laughter, you know? So I mean, I loved these. I am a big fan of Jimmy Fallon today with the Tonight Show, but I was not a fan of his tenure. I think his career trajectory is exactly how it was supposed to be. You know, I think he's worthy of this spot. He has a great way about him with this, you know, the Tonight Show. I'm glad that Lauren fought so hard for him to be the one to have that job and all that. But yeah, there are very few things that I'd consider Fallon being worthy of in terms of his tenure on the show that would be like a top anything, you know, whether an impression or an update or this or that. It would take a lot to convince me to give him any sort of award, even though I'm a huge fan today.
Yeah, personally, you know, I was hoping Fallon's career trajectory was going to be, you know, like 3 or 4 like fever pitch movies, but that's just me. But all right, cool. So I guess now,
Sammy, you're gonna kill me. I got another one of these. I physically could not put this on any list because it's not really an impression, but I have an honorable mention that has to come up, and I'm sorry. It's Bill Hader as Lindsey Buckingham. All right, like
that was close. That was close on my list. Funny. Yeah, no, absolutely iconic and something that, like you said, not really an impression, but like, I mean, those What Up With That sketches, like, you know, Keenan, I think recently said in like an interview or on a podcast that like he just, you know, is not gonna like ever really bring those back unless he has like Bill, you know, in studio, because he like was such like an integral part of those sketches, where even though, you know, a lot of the other aspects of that recurring sketch kind of changed over the years with different cast members and whatnot, you know, he was like, I don't want to say it was the heart of those sketches, but you know, maybe, but yeah,
the soul. He wasn't
the soul.
Heart, he was the soul.
Keenan's the heart, and Bill's the soul.
Yeah,
but,
Samuel L. Jackson's the potty.
Was it? Was it new footage when they did it, the SNL at home, and they had that blurry picture of Bill as Lindsey Buckingham, or like did he reprise it, or was it old footage? Does anybody know?
That's a good question. I wondered about that as well when it happened.
Yeah, because I think Fred and Jason, that was new footage. Like someone had to have dropped off those costumes at their house and they recorded. You know, back when nobody, you know, they couldn't have picked up whatever. Yeah, if anybody knows, let us know. I'd be very curious if they went through all the effort of getting Bill in his whole thing just for like this half a second of a blurry image, you know. That would be pretty funny if they went through all the effort.
But yeah, cool. Well, Haskell, thanks for bringing that one up. So now we put it to a vote. So I'm going to start with Nicole. I mean, we can start with Nicole, but I feel like we already know where you're going with this one.
Yeah, Vanessa as Miley Cyrus, or Miley Stewart. She gave us a lot of Miley Stewart in there.
Right.
You know, the character. True. So that's like a double whammy.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on over to Bill. Who are you voting for on this one?
It's close, but I will go with Vanessa as well.
Yay!
Vanessa. All right, and
Sammy, you got to go next to see if there's a tie.
Right. Well, I would vote for yours in that case, because Very Good Talk Show is fantastic. So I'm voting for yours.
All right. Well,
so then there can't be a tie.
That means Vanessa's Miley Cyrus is going to win. So, as an ode to Vanessa Bayer in an era of SNL that I love, I will also give my vote to Vanessa's Miley Cyrus, Miley Stewart.
Very nice.
Any form of Miley you can think of.
You know, we're getting close to that hour-and-a-half marks, but we do want to touch on our wild card selections. So I'm going to really quickly, just to preface, the wild card is an impression that doesn't necessarily fit in those 3 other categories. And so we're gonna start with Nicole. Let's start with you on this one.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I could come back to you if that's easier.
No, we'll just roll with it. This is recency bias, major vibes, but you know, we're gonna roll with it. So another person who I really wanted on my Rushmore is Kate McKinnon, and I also was doing a deep dive into a lot of the, you know, the talk shows, the Family Feuds and the Celebrity Jeopardies, all that kind of stuff. And her Frances McDormand just really stuck out to me when I rewatched it, like earlier today and also a few days ago. It's just like it is so funny. I love Frances McDormand. She's such a freak, in the best way. And Kate just embodies the side of her that is like, just that, like, you always know, like, some weird quirky thing is bubbling up at the surface. Like, she's just always about to say something crazy and quirky and weird, which is my favorite thing, when it's like Kate is embodying someone else, and it's like, it's not Kate who's about to say something. Like, Frances is always about to do something like really spunky. Like last night when she did the Wolf Hound, which was actually a beautiful tribute to someone, I think Michael Wolf Snyder was his name, who sadly passed away a couple months ago, who worked on Nomadland. But her tribute, you know, someone else could have just said a speech, and she had just a vibrant, quirky way of celebrating somebody. And that Kate is perfect with that. As I said, her impressions are always marked by empathy. That's what has always set her apart. She always finds the human in the person, and she takes just even a bit of their humanity, and she just like finds a way to illuminate it more than anybody else ever could. And that's what she did with Frances, with, you know, the little mannerisms all the way up to the random moments of glory. So I recency bias majorly, but I loved it, and I'm gonna hold my ground.
For sure, and very, very, topical, I guess, based on last night's Oscars. Do you guys want to touch on this impression?
I think it is very recent. I have to go back and maybe double check some of it. But talk about an impression where you want the person to show up. Like,
oh my
that
God,
would be
I would
killer.
give anything.
That's something that, put that on my SNL wish list. I'm rooting for that one now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe now that she is a 3-time Oscar winner, they'll have her host maybe not the finale, but who knows? Maybe the finale. But yeah, no. And any other thoughts on this one?
You know, finding a way to get Kate on the list is definitely a great thing, especially with, she did so many of the political impressions, but she's overshadowed, unfortunately, by some of the others who have come before her. But yeah, I like that. Frances McDormand, she's on the Mount Rushmore of something for sure. So great pick.
Definitely. Haskell, let's turn it over to you. Let's hear who is your wild card selection.
Yeah, I teased that Will Ferrell was going to come onto my list, and this is my favorite SNL impression. It might be right up there as my favorite SNL bit ever. It's Will Ferrell as Harry Carey and the ghost of Harry Carey. I mean, we know the moon isn't made out of cheese, but what if it was made out of barbecue spare ribs? Like that. Again, it's one of those impressions that I love because it showed up. He did it 8 times with 3 different Weekend Update anchors. He did it in sketches that weren't Weekend Update. Like, it fit everywhere. It is just, to me, Will Ferrell, outside of maybe George W. Bush, it's Will Ferrell at his best. It's crying laughter whenever he pulls that out. I love it. I love that he's done it like as the ghost. He talked about being up in heaven and what he got into there. So absolutely my number one favorite SNL impression.
The thing about Will Ferrell that's interesting is that, if you look at his film career, he's always kind of playing a version of himself. He's not someone that you would describe as like a chameleon, but there's something about like the impressions that he brought onto the show where they were truly just characters. And he basically took, the basis, getting some of the mannerisms down, but maybe it's not like, if you were to put them right next to each other, like exactly, the perfect impression, but the character that he brought to all of, his impressions on the show were, top notch. Does anyone want to add to this one?
Well, since Haskell stole my pick.
Yeah, this could be your pick. This could be your pick.
We're vibing hard tonight, Haskell. This may be my favorite impression of all time as well, like over everything. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s and you had cable, you probably had WGN, which meant you had Chicago Cubs baseball on at 1:00 in the afternoon every day, and Harry Carey, drunk as a skunk, talking and saying exactly the kind of crazy things that Will Ferrell was doing on the show. He would go off on tangents. He would stop watching the game. He would look for the pretty girls in the stands, and Will embodied that entire thing every time. He was on Colin Quinn's first update and called him Norm the entire time. And then of course, like Haskell alluded to, all the crazy questions that he would get to, whether it was about if the moon was made out of barbecue spare ribs, would you eat it? Or if you were made out of a hot dog and you were hungry, would you eat yourself? Oh, perfect from top to bottom. Will Ferrell, great pick, and my pick as well.
Love it.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I think it was Sammy, how you said Will is always playing a version of himself, kind of like it's always a character. But I always love thinking about everybody and how they're all a little bit different like that. With a Jimmy Fallon, he always feels like he's a little bit himself, but he's also always on the verge of breaking. Whereas Will is kind of this like inverse of that, sort of like he's so himself that he would never, like, he doesn't break that much because he, like, it's these unique characters, but they're all kind of a piece of him. And yeah, I love that too. Everyone in the world has said this before, but like, there's nothing he could do that wouldn't be funny. Like, he makes one look and it's funny. He says one thing and it's funny. Like, it's, like some legends are born, not made. And then, a legend like that, he was destined for this, and he's clearly worked so hard and has done really cool things. Like, I do want to kind of talk for a second, not to go on such a tangent, but like, it's not just that he's had this illustrious movie career. Like, he has a podcast network now. Like, he's uplifting a lot of people, different kind of corners of the comedy world and podcasting. He, his producer credits are like off the charts. So he's just maybe like the most inspiring example of a post SNL career, and not just in the ways that are so obvious of the back-to-back huge movies. Like, he has kind of just his finger on the pulse in every sense of media and entertainment. And, he's uplifting other people, but also still very much the star of anything he'd ever want to be the star in. So very aspirational career, I would say. And just like the best person ever, I would imagine too.
I hope so. He definitely seems like someone who, like, if he's not a good person, then what's the point of like living or anything? Gary Sanchez Productions, his production company, like Funny or Die. He's had such a hand on kind of crafting comedy in like the digital age. Post being on SNL, and we love Will Ferrell on this podcast. I guess Bill, that was your pick as well. So I guess I'll go and say my pick, someone that Haskell just brought up, the Lindsey Buckingham of it all. Bill Hader is someone who needs to be discussed in that Daryl Hammond sort of Jay Farrow breath of incredible impressionists that were on the show. And I was kind of pulling my hair out trying to figure out, how do I get Bill on my list. Alan Alda was very close up there as someone, I was in between Nick Cage and Alan Alda. His Al Pacino is really fun. But I'm picking this person as, he's also a director. So that's how I'm kind of finagling it into this category. Bill Hader is Clint Eastwood. Now, sketches that I revisit to a lot, and this is something that I wish the show did a lot more of, where they have a kind of similar to what they would do with MacGruber back in the day, where they would kind of pop in throughout the show, like little 1 or 2 minute bits. But his Chrysler ad, where he's impersonating, that Super Bowl ad, that's just great. So many lines in that are super memorable. The visual gag of his pants getting higher, with every time they cut back to the commercial. And Bill Hader just has one of those faces where he has such an interesting face that only he can kind of, pull off that kind of, as someone who is not, a 70, 80-year-old man, he's able to pull off that grizzled Clint Eastwood, look, and the voice, just super on point. And it was also like a good example of a way that SNL could do political humor, back in that era without, how they kind of did in the Trump era, where they're poking fun of him at the RNC with the chair and everything like that, and him commenting on all of like the different politicians that were there around the time. I mean, he has this one line about Chris Christie where he's like, I think we're going to need a bigger chair, just hilarious stuff. And, Bill Hader is someone who is, if we're doing a cast member Mount Rushmore, he would 100% be on my Mount Rushmore. So he had to be on my celebrity Mount Impressionmore for this episode. Does anyone want to touch on Bill Hader as Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, that, like you said, that they're running it throughout the episode. Definitely something I'd love to see more of. Just to touch on your you almost went with Alan Alda, his Alan Alda. That was one of those, again, technically one of the best impressions you'll ever see. The only reason that didn't make it up higher anywhere on my list is I just feel like they didn't get that much out of it. Same thing with his John Malkovich is incredible, but they just didn't get that much out of it. And sometimes that's what happens when you have a really, really, really good technical impression. But his Clint Eastwood, we had to get Hader on this list somewhere, and so I'm glad you threw that in there.
Yeah, I leaving Hader and Dana Carvey off were the two hardest ones for me, because how did we not talk about Dana Carvey at all? The man did 2 impressions in the same sketch in the 92 presidential debate, doing Perot and Bush. But yeah, Hader, I went back and forth between Alan Alda and his Al Pacino, when they're down in New Orleans fixing up houses and he can't figure out how to use a hammer. But yeah, Hader and talk about post-career. I mean, Barry's one of the best shows out there right now. He's gone on to really make a name for himself in a different way, and great pick.
Yeah, I agree. I actually rewatched that today, the Chrysler one of them. It's a series of 3, right? Mm-hmm. Which is great in itself. But yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about Bill. He's in terms of just pure impressionist, he needs to be on our Impressmore. I also will say for his Al Pacino, one of my favorites when we're talking about impressions, a little bit extra meta impression would be the "You're a Rat Bastard" Charlie Brown, where everybody is, it's an impression of an impression, which is just like the funniest thing to me in the world. Again, Charlie Brown was my 4th grade play. I played Sally Brown. So it's like that was just my world. And it was actually around the same time. No, it was a few years. I'm not that young. It was like a couple of years after that. But yeah, it's like, so Bill Hader is playing Al Pacino playing Charlie Brown. And it's so funny. It's just this like angry, like grumpy guy. And just, yeah, Bill deserves a spot on this Impressmore, and I love that one. I rewatched it literally like an hour before we started, so I'm a big fan. And the way he can contort his face, as you said, it's like these close-up shots where it's like, how are you not an 85-year-old man? Like, it's like you are, but then you're also a 12-year-old sometimes. Like, it's just a testament that he fully is someone who, even though he's a weird mix of someone who breaks a lot, but also like immerses so intensely into his character. So, that's an amazing one.
Yeah, before we take this to a vote, I do want to say that it is interesting that a lot of these, Hall of Fame impressionists are having trouble cracking our list because there's just so many of their impressions where it's almost like choosing your favorite child, or your favorite family member. It's like, you just end up just choosing nothing. Jay Farrow, Daryl Hammond. Now these are people who, Dana Carvey, as we just said, are people who are just incredible impressionists that might not make it on our list. And, we might have to do a future Superfan Takeover where we're just doing a deep dive on some of these, impressionists. We can do a whole category on a lot of these, or, break them down into categories for a lot of these guys. But, we'll see if we do that in the future. So let's put it to a vote. So obviously, because Bill and Haskell already, they both were voting for, or they both selected Harry Carey as their impression, that's automatically getting a point. So it's you and me, Nicole. Nicole, who are you voting for the impressions?
Bill as Clint Eastwood, for sure. That's mine.
Well, that's I appreciate the vote, but I got to go with Will Ferrell as Harry Carey on this one. As to quote the 100th digital short, 3 best ofs, count them, B words. The Harry Carey sketches. I had those best ofs as a kid, and I absolutely love them because I'm not a big sports guy, and I had no idea who Harry Carey was, but the impression itself still worked for me. And Will Ferrell definitely deserves a spot on this list. It hurts to not have Bill Hader on there, but like I said, in the future we might have to do another impression specific actor on the show in at some point. But just to kind of sum it all up, our celebrity Mount Rushmore, the political impression is Larry David as Bernie Sanders. The actor or actress is Jim Brewer as Joe Pesci. For musician, we have Vanessa Bayer as Miley Cyrus. And for the wild card selection, we have Will Ferrell as Harry Carey. So that is your celebrity, the first initial definitive SNL Superfan celebrity Mount Rushmore. That was a mouthful. Please let us know. I'm sure people on Twitter or in the comments are going to say that we missed a bunch of things. Please let us know who would be on your Mount Rushmore. I keep messing that up. But please let us know. What did we get right? What did we get wrong? Regardless, I hope you guys had a really fun time listening to the episode. Before we get into plugs, I do want to thank everybody for joining us on the panel today. This was a really fun conversation. Looking ahead, obviously the show comes back. SNL comes back on May 8th, so the roundtables will start once the show comes back. But next week, John will be doing an interview with a very special guest. I'm not going to say who it is, but someone who is involved behind the scenes at Saturday Night Live. So you definitely are not going to want to miss that. Nicole, do you want to quickly talk about, what's going on in the world of the social media of SNL Stats, where they should find this?
Yeah, of course. So Instagram and Twitter, we have been really active. If you want to catch, whether it's during the shows on Saturday nights, we do live data reporting on Twitter specifically. You will get that, the live from New York statistics specifically. We update those right away, which is, it's really fun to kind of watch along with us, live tweeting. And then the Instagram, we're doing a lot of fun stuff on our Instagram stories, lots of interactive things. Today we talked about impressions on the Instagram story. I will put that as a highlight. So if anybody wants to check out our Instagram and go through a bunch of the ones that we didn't even address here, it's just an endless well of amazing impressions. So yeah, we're just continuing to do some interesting data, some charts, different types of charts, some clips from here. Also, if you ever have ideas, some things that you want us to lean more into, as I said, I'm very impressionable. So I'm also very receptive. If anybody wants, has some feedback for us, I would love, we do this for the community. So if any of you have suggestions, some things you want us to work on or research or add to our content, that would be so appreciated. I would love any feedback. I just want to make our social media as fun and engaging as possible. So I'm always, our DMs and messages are always open for that.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the deep dive on all things SNL Stats social media. All right, let's get into plugs. Haskell, well, first off, I need to know what was the final pun tally for this episode, and then you can obviously plug what you'd like to plug.
All right. Well, yes, the pun counter first. Let me just say, Nicole, your first Superfan Takeover, I think you made a great first impression. Yes! Final count. Pun counter.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm both honored and annoyed that you did that. So you killed me.
The best of both worlds, as Miley Cyrus would say.
Nice. I'm still a rock star, and I'll see you again. I could do that forever. Oh my gosh, I'm reminiscing, you guys. Hannah Montana was my world. Great. Everyone go listen, Hannah Montana 2. That album slaps. I think it's like 2006 vibe, like just slaps. Go check it out.
I think we just lost our core audience with that one. But Haskell, do you want to continue with your plug? Yes,
Andrew E. Haskell on Twitter. If any of our fans are in the Northeast area, starting to get back on stage after this pandemic. So I was just at Rhode Island Comedy Connection last weekend. We'll be adding shows. If you are in the area, come out and support. And of course, as always, hashtag get Sammy on MacGruber. We got to get our man, the TikTok Prince, onto MacGruber. So please use that hashtag whenever you can.
Just too kind. Yes, please hashtag get it trending, all that. Bill, where can the people find you?
Well, for all things Hannah Montana, follow me at BKLove73. Yeah, at Twitter and Instagram.
All right, Nicole, amazing first debut on the Superfan Takeover. Thank you so much for joining us and contributing to the conversation. Where can the people find you?
Thank you so much. It has been a blast. So I would rather plug actually Hannah Montana for her 10th anniversary since the finale has debuted on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at Hannah Montana Verified, all the works. Go follow. In addition to Miley Cyrus, follow both. You got to get the best of both worlds. Very important. And then I'm at Nicole Rovine on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not a, TikTok prince or princess as you are, Sammy, but I have like a couple little funny videos from quarantine that I really thought I was going to keep going on that, but I'm very inspired. Everyone should go follow Sammy on TikTok. He's really like consistent and really funny and timely content, and it's very impressive.
I swear I did not pay any of these people to say that. They said it from the bottom of their hearts. So really quickly,
our plastic hearts.
Yeah,
at Miley Cyrus.
Does that count for the pun tally? All right, so really quickly, I do want to also plug the other Superfan episodes. If you have not had a chance to listen or watch those, please do so. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts are sold. Please make sure that you're subscribed there and on YouTube. Also, I do want to tease one last thing. You may see me on another SNL Stats related episode next week that we have not announced yet, but please keep your eyes on our social medias for that. Like everyone said here, you can follow me at that Sammy Kay on Twitter, Instagram, and I guess I'm a TikTok prince, so TikTok, why not? Follow me there. Thank you very much for joining us. This was a really fun episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let us know what you thought, what you'd like to see us talk about in the future. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
But we're here for the numbers as well. So let's get statistical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.